Hey guys, and welcome back. Today's video is going to be a whole lot of fun. I'm going to be talking about the only makeup brands I had even heard of before discovering the beauty community on YouTube. I have been really passionate about makeup since I was a little kid, but I didn't know that much about it, and I didn't know that many people that were into makeup, and so I didn't know what products to buy, and I didn't know how to use them. It wasn't until I discovered YouTube at the age of 24, which was 12 years ago. I'm 36 now, so I've been watching YouTube for 12 years. That is a very, very long time. That's when things changed for me so much because I discovered how to apply products and also which products to buy, brands I had never heard of. I mean, the floodgates opened and everything changed after that. But before that, even the few people that I did know that wore makeup, I was just like too embarrassed to even ask them. So even in high school and college, I wore very minimal makeup because I just really didn't know how to do it or what to use. So I am so happy about the beauty community's existence because it really has changed things for me and has allowed me to explore my love of makeup. And yeah, it's a whole lot of fun and I love having my channel. Thank you so much for watching. Really, I wanted to start a channel from the time I discovered YouTube. And it wasn't until 3.5 years ago that I did finally do that. So thank you. It means a lot to me. I really am very, very passionate about makeup. So let us know all the things that you knew about before YouTube. I'm sure most people were way more informed than I was, but also, this was in the time before much, internet, YouTube, Instagram, this did not exist when I was a middle schooler and a high schooler or even in college. But yeah, I thought this would be fun to share, so let's get started. The first brand I definitely knew about, but I didn't buy their products, was Clinique. When I was in high school, all the cool girls wore Clinique makeup, and it was department store and high-end. The few makeup that I did have in middle school and high school was drugstore. Like my mom would let me buy, some of the cheap drugstore stuff here and there, but definitely not high-end, which makes sense because I really didn't know what I was doing. But Clinique is something I coveted because, like I said, all the popular people were wearing Clinique, and yeah, it was one of the few higher end brands that I even knew about, but everybody, okay, I remember high school gym class locker room, girls that wore makeup, which wasn't really me, were putting on their makeup after gym class, and everybody had those Clinique bags that came free with purchase, and those green compacts. A lot of nostalgia seeing those. But yeah, so when I finally tried Clinique, it wasn't until after I discovered the YouTube community because, like I said, before that, I didn't really know what to get, so I wasn't really going to be buying high-end makeup or anything like that. But I gotta say, Clinique has some nostalgia for me just because it reminds me of high school, basically. Now, I did know about all of the drugstore brands just because I would see them, like walking through Walgreens, L'Oreal, Maybelline, CoverGirl, Revlon, Almay, Neutrogena. I knew about all of those, but I had not used many of their products. I will say the one brand that I owned the most of before discovering YouTube was Maybelline. And part of that maybe was because one of the first mascaras, actually the first mascara I tried, was the Great Lash Mascara, and I know a lot of people probably around my age group also had that mascara. It was in all of the magazines. Yes, I read all of the magazines because, Instagram was not a thing, so the beauty section of magazines was one of my favorite parts. I loved that. So the Great Lash Mascara, yes, I did own that. My mom bought it for me. I think I was in middle school. It was one of the few products I wore in middle school. But then when I got into college, I wanted to buy a little bit of makeup. So I bought the Maybelline Powder Foundation, a bronzer, and I think a lip gloss, and I maybe was still using the Great Lash Mascara. I don't know, maybe I tried some L'Oreal mascaras by this point, but that was pretty much like the extent of my makeup wearing. I had a black eyeliner too that I would smudge out, probably terribly, who knows what that looked like, but that was like all the makeup that I owned in college, and I had the same makeup bag of those products for the entire 4 years. And yeah, it wasn't until afterwards until I started buying some other things. But for me, Maybelline was my go-to brand. Like I said, maybe it was because it was one of the first brands that I was allowed to buy as a kid. But yeah, I used Maybelline products for a very long time. And CoverGirl for sure. I think I had a CoverGirl lip gloss. I think in college. I don't really remember. This was quite a while ago, but yeah, I'm pretty sure I did have a CoverGirl gloss, and maybe there were one or two other things I had from CoverGirl, but I mean, I wasn't wearing a full face of makeup. Like I said, I was just wearing some powder foundation, mascara, lip gloss. That was about it. And I didn't even put that on every day. That was weekend makeup for me. I definitely did not wear makeup every day, but I definitely did have a couple of things from CoverGirl too. Another brand I have major nostalgia for because it is one of the brands that my mom would let me buy from when I was in middle school, Wet n Wild. So yes, this was in the 90s. Wet n Wild, super famous brand. I loved LS's video about Wet n Wild, by the way. That was so interesting, and that took me back because I had their 99-cent nail polishes, and I really wish I still had some. I should check if my mom still has some of those under the bathroom sink. I need to look because my sister and I had quite a few of those 99-cent Wet n Wild nail polishes. I loved painting my nails starting from when I was in middle school, and I still love painting my nails. It is so much fun. And I think I had like a 99-cent eyeliner from them and maybe a couple of other things, but it was so interesting because Wet n Wild, I stopped using their, like those, I was only using those products in like middle school. And then after that, apparently I graduated to Maybelline, but when I started watching YouTube and Wet n Wild made this resurgence where they reformulated everything and they started coming out with some pretty good products like the famous Walking on Eggshells trio. I definitely bought that, but that was after the YouTube days, of course. Yeah, I was very excited to see that because I had not bought from Wet n Wild since I was in middle school, and I kind of considered it like this cheapy, like little kids brand. But now I still love Wet n Wild products, and it's just kind of crazy that I stopped using Wet n Wild for probably over 10 years, and then I started buying their products again, and I still think they have some really, really great products. Next up is a brand that I definitely knew about, but I never bought from until, post YouTube times, and that is MAC. Now, MAC, I didn't really hear about that until I was in college because, like I said, when I was in high school, the only high-end brand I really knew about was Clinique. Well, and maybe Lancome because my mom wore Lancome perfume, but that was about it. MAC, yes. In college, there were some people I knew that used MAC products, and I just thought it looked so, so cool. And, like walking through a Macy's, I would see the MAC counter and it just looked so cool. Like the makeup artists were all wearing super dramatic makeup and they're wearing all black outfits. And I thought that is such a cool brand, but I was so intimidated. I wasn't going to go near there. Even in college, when I could have probably bought a couple of things from MAC at that time, I was just so intimidated to even go near the MAC counter because it just looked like people would laugh at me if I walked up there. And I will say, so post YouTube, I finally decided I want to buy MAC products. I've been hearing about this brand for a while. And I will say sometimes at the MAC counter when I did finally go, some people were not very friendly, which is sad. And I know that other people have said that about MAC, although I've been to plenty of MAC counters where the people are really, really nice and friendly. But when I first started going there, maybe it's because I was so overwhelmed and so intimidated. I'm a pretty shy person overall, and I was even more so when I was like a teenager and in my 20s. So it took a lot of nerve for me to even go to a MAC counter or a MAC store. But yeah, a lot of nostalgia for MAC, but I didn't actually try the brand until I discovered YouTube, because then I actually knew like what products to buy. But I mean, I admit I first bought some of their products online before I ever went to a MAC counter because, like I said, I was very, very scared to go up there. Next up is definitely an old school brand that I was one of the few that I was also using in middle school time, Jane Cosmetics. So interestingly, I looked up Jane Cosmetics and it still exists, but their products are way more expensive than they were at that time. It was kind of like Wet n Wild. They were next to each other in the drugstore, and a lot of the stuff was like 99 cents. And I remember I had some of these eyeshadows in a circle pan. I found a picture of these online and I was pretty excited. I was like, oh my gosh, I for sure had at least one of those. Most of the products were 99 cents. It seemed very similar to Wet n Wild at that time, but kind of interesting that now, because I just checked their website and I don't know, I have not seen it in a store in a long time. but I used to be able to see it at like Walgreens is where I used to see Jane Cosmetics next to the Wet n Wild stuff. But again, this was in the 90s, quite a while ago now. And I don't know if it's sold in stores, but their products are expensive. It was like $16 for a blush. I was like, whoa, okay, that is pricey, Jane Cosmetics. You have changed over the years. Who knows? I mean, maybe the brand completely revamped. Maybe there's new owners. I don't know anything about it. Clearly, things have changed. Although, so I remember this was, I cannot remember how long ago, maybe 6-7 years ago, suddenly Jane Cosmetics showed up at Ulta. And it was different. The packaging had changed. It was not what I knew in middle school. And it was more expensive, but it wasn't as expensive as the items that I just saw on their website. But they had, the products were about $8 to $9. And I remember there was a bronzer that people were talking about on YouTube for a while and people were loving it. But then by the time I wanted to go buy it, because I was like, oh my gosh, Jane Cosmetics, this takes me back to middle school. I want to buy some of their stuff. It was out of Ulta. So I don't know what happened. It didn't last there very long. If anybody knows, please let us know what happened to Jane Cosmetics, but it's still around. It's just, you know, way too expensive. And at those prices, I definitely would not have had those products in middle school. Alrighty, and the last brand, this is kind of interesting and I had forgot about this. I knew about Josie Maron. So after I graduated college, like I said, I was like, hey, I'm working a full-time job. I want to buy some makeup. But again, I didn't really know how to use it. I was too embarrassed to ask anybody. And I was watching QVC and they had Josie Maron Cosmetics and it looked so beautiful. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. This was my first high-end makeup purchase at the age of 23. I ordered this face palette from Josie Maron off QVC. I know, this is like totally crazy. And I panned the entire thing. I actually found a picture of this online on the From Head to Toe blog, who's a YouTuber who I used to watch like a long time ago. I haven't watched her in a while. She had this on her blog, so I'll show you a picture of it. It was really beautiful, like rose gold shiny packaging, very luxurious. And it had 5 eyeshadows, and then I think it was 2 blushes and a highlighter. I used the entire thing up. So beautiful, absolutely loved it. And then a year after this is when I discovered YouTube and started watching the beauty community. And, you know, I didn't buy anything from Josie Maron for many years until it showed up at Sephora and I was like, oh my gosh, this was that first high-end face palette I ever bought. So I bought her foundation and I really, really liked it. But again, that's like disappearing out of Sephora. I don't really know what happened with that. And I looked it up. Josie Maron is still being sold on QVC. After all these years, crazy, because yeah, that was 13 years ago that I bought that face palette. So much nostalgia, finished the entire thing up. It was so beautiful and it was so exciting to make that first high-end purchase. But yeah, that one really, really takes me back and is definitely very exciting for me. That is it for this video. This really, really does take me back and it's just so crazy that these were the only brands that I'd heard of and I'd only purchased even from half of these. The other half, I just knew about them, but I just didn't buy their products because I just felt like I didn't know enough about it and all of that. It's just crazy to think about people who are younger than me who did get to grow up with the Instagram and the YouTube knowledge. I mean, in a way, I really envy that because if I had had that as a teenager who was just like way too nervous to ask anyone, I could have just gone on my own and, you know, gotten the information. I mean, like in college, if I had this YouTube knowledge in college, oh my gosh, I would have gone crazy with makeup because I mean, my parents also didn't want me to like wear much makeup in middle school and high school, but they were fine with me wearing like a little bit, you know, like mascara, lip gloss, like they didn't really care about that. But gosh, I think about if this had existed when I was in college. YouTube didn't exist until after I graduated at all. Oh my gosh, things would have been so different for me. I would have probably gone crazy buying makeup in college. I had a part-time job. I probably would have used the majority of that money buying makeup if this had existed. So maybe it's a good thing. But I mean, I wouldn't have gone like crazy buying tons of high-end, but Man, it would have been really, really cool. But that is okay. Eventually, YouTube happened and I discovered the beauty community, and here we are 12 years later. So please let us know, what were you using before you started watching YouTube, or maybe you kind of grew up with it and you didn't really know a lot about makeup before that. And so I'm sure there are tons of people out there who, once they started wearing makeup, Instagram and YouTube was already a thing, and that's how they were discovering products. So I just think it's pretty cool to think about a lot of nostalgia here. So yeah, let us know what you think. That is it. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.